Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going super deep on a book that, well, it seems to have this kind of unique ability to polarize readers.
Yeah.
Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life.
It's interesting, isn't it? You don't just see the love it or hate it with this one. People are really deeply affected one way or another.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're going straight to the source.
Okay.
Goodreads reviews. We've got a whole stack of them, ranging from those 5-star life-changing raves
Wow.
to the, this book messed me up critiques.
It's almost like the book is a mirror,
Huh.
reflecting the reader's anxieties and experiences right back at them.
Okay, so before we get into the really intense stuff, let's set the stage. A Little Life follows 4 friends.
Okay.
Willem, J.B. Malcolm, and Jude, navigating life in New York City after college.
So the story spans decades, but the real heart of it is Jude. He's a brilliant lawyer, but he's haunted by a past that's just riddled with abuse.
Right.
And it's the way Yanagihara portrays this abuse, both the trauma itself and its long-lasting impact on Jude.
It really gets people talking.
And that's where we see these really strong reactions coming out in the reviews. Some readers are calling it the book of my life.
Right.
Others are saying, I wanted to throw this book across the room.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is it about A Little Life that provokes such visceral responses?
Yeah.
What are people connecting with or recoiling from so intensely?
You know, one thing that struck me was how often reviewers mentioned feeling shattered,
Oh, yeah.
devastated, or even manipulated by the book.
That's a powerful reaction to a work of fiction.
Yeah.
It suggests that Yanagihara isn't just telling a story,
Right.
she's creating an experience,
Yeah,
one that can be deeply unsettling and emotionally charged.
for sure. And I think that intensity really comes through in how the novel tackles some pretty heavy themes.
Yeah.
Let's start with friendship. A Little Life delves into the complexities of these 4 friends' bond, the way they love and support each other, but also the ways they sometimes fail each other. It's a raw and honest portrayal of how even the closest friendships can have their limitations,
Yeah.
especially when dealing with deep-seated trauma.
You see this play out most intensely in how the friends, especially Willem, try to support Jude.
Right.
They rally around him, but some readers argue that they end up enabling him rather than truly helping him heal.
That's an interesting point. It raises the question of what true support really looks like
Yeah.
in the face of profound suffering.
Hmm.
Is it about unwavering loyalty and protection, or is it about pushing someone to confront their pain and seek professional help?
Right, and that leads us to another major theme and point of controversy: trauma and abuse.
Okay.
Yanagihara does not hold back in depicting the brutality of Jude's past.
Yeah.
She provides graphic details about the physical, emotional, and sexual abuse he endured,
Wow.
starting at a very young age.
And this is where we see the misery porn criticism come into play.
Oh, yeah.
Some readers find the graphic nature of the abuse to be gratuitous, even exploitative. They argue that the novel seems to revel in Jude's suffering, using it for shock value, or to manipulate the reader's emotions.
One reviewer even compared reading the book to emotional torture,
Oh, wow.
as if the author was intentionally inflicting pain on her audience.
It's a harsh critique, but it highlights the visceral reactions
Yeah,
people
yeah.
have to the novel's unflinching portrayal of trauma. But it's important to remember that not all readers share this view.
You're right. There are plenty of reviewers who found the novel's exploration of trauma to be powerful, even cathartic. They see it as a raw and honest depiction of how abuse can shape a person's identity, relationships, and their very ability to experience joy.
And it's this dichotomy of responses that makes A Little Life so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a book that forces us to confront our own limits when it comes to engaging with difficult subject matter.
And those differing reactions, they'll love it versus this is too much crowd, are probably influenced by the author's own approach to the topic. Yanagihara has said that she intentionally wanted to create a character who was irreparably broken.
And she even admitted to not doing any research into child abuse while writing the novel,
Wow.
which has been a source of contention for some readers.
Especially those who have personal experience with trauma.
Right.
They argue that writing about such sensitive topics without proper research
Yeah.
can trivialize the real-life experiences of survivors and even perpetuate harmful stereotypes.
But for others, the novel's raw and unflinching portrayal resonated deeply. They saw it as a validation of their own experiences, a recognition that the wounds of trauma can linger for a lifetime.
It's almost like the novel is a Rorschach test,
Yeah.
reflecting back each reader's own anxieties,
Yeah.
sensitivities, and experiences.
And it's this mirror-like quality that makes A Little Life so difficult to categorize. It's not a simple story of redemption or healing. It's a messy, complex exploration of suffering and the limits of human resilience.
And it's that complexity, that refusal to offer easy answers, that seems to be at the heart of both the novel's critical acclaim and the intense controversy it continues to generate.
It's almost as if Yanagihara is challenging us, the readers, to confront our own assumptions about suffering, healing, and the very nature of empathy.
Speaking of challenging assumptions, A Little Life doesn't shy away from exploring the dark side of mental illness. Jude's struggles with self-harm, depression, and suicidal thoughts are central to the narrative.
And again, this is where we see a sharp divide in reader responses. Some find the novel's portrayal of mental illness to be incredibly bleak and even dangerous. They argue that it perpetuates a sense of hopelessness and that it sends the message that some people are simply too broken to be helped.
It's interesting because for me, it felt more like the novel was critiquing the limitations of therapy and support systems.
Oh, interesting.
There's a sense that Jude's pain is so deep, so ingrained, that it may be beyond the reach of traditional healing methods.
And that's a really thought-provoking idea. Is the novel suggesting that some wounds are simply too profound to heal? Or is it highlighting the need for more compassionate and innovative approaches to mental health care?
I think that's one of the things that makes A Little Life such a powerful and enduring work of literature. It doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions. It leaves a lot of questions unanswered, forcing us to grapple with the complexities of mental illness and the often messy nature of healing.
And by doing so, it opens up a space for dialogue, for questioning assumptions, and for rethinking our approaches to mental health care.
And it's not just mental illness that the novel tackles. It also touches upon themes of masculinity, sexuality, and race. But again, it doesn't offer simple solutions or neat categorizations.
For example, the novel explores Jude's experience as a gay man, but it's also been criticized for reinforcing harmful stereotypes about gay relationships and suffering.
This ties into a larger point that a lot of readers have brought up. They say that while A Little Life touches upon various identities, the primary focus remains on Jude's individual trauma.
And that creates this kind of blind spot when it comes to exploring the systemic forces that contribute to marginalization and suffering.
It's like the novel dives deep into the psychological complexities of its characters, but it shies away from engaging with the social and political contexts that shape their lives.
And this might explain why some reviewers, especially those who are attuned to issues of social justice, find A Little Life to be lacking in depth or even problematic in its representation of certain identities.
Okay, so we've got this book that's exploring trauma, friendship, mental health, and identity, all in a way that seems to provoke really strong and often conflicting reactions from readers. But what about the writing itself? How does Yanagihara's style contribute to the novel's impact?
Well, A Little Life is definitely not a light read, both literally and figuratively. At over 700 pages, it's a hefty book, and the writing style itself is dense and descriptive. Some might even say melodramatic.
That's a good word for it. You know, you get these really long, descriptive passages delving deep into the characters' inner lives. And while some readers find that immersive and emotionally resonant, others feel like it's repetitive or overwrought.
Some reviewers specifically mention the way Yanagihara describes JB's art in meticulous detail. They felt it detracted from the story rather than adding to their understanding of JB as a character.
Almost like those passages were more about showcasing the author's writing prowess than serving the narrative itself. It's interesting how something that captivates some readers can feel like a chore to others.
And I think that's another clue as to why A Little Life is so divisive. It challenges conventional expectations of what a novel should be. It's long, it's dark, it's challenging, and it doesn't tie everything up neatly in the end.
So here's where it gets really interesting. What makes A Little Life so polarizing? Why does it provoke such extreme reactions, both positive and negative?
Well, I think it boils down to the fact that A Little Life pushes boundaries. It doesn't shy away from darkness and pain, challenging our conventional narratives about healing and redemption. It forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths about human suffering and the complexities of love, friendship, and loss.
So it's almost like the novel holds up a mirror, reflecting back our anxieties and beliefs about these big existential questions.
Precisely. And for some readers, that can be a deeply unsettling experience.
Some reviewers even mention the sheer length of the novel, those 700-plus pages of intense emotional exploration contributing to this feeling of being overwhelmed.
It's almost as if Yanagihara forces the reader to endure the same relentless suffering as her protagonist. And for readers who are sensitive to depictions of trauma, that can be a truly harrowing experience.
Yeah, I can see how that would be exhausting, even triggering for some. But for others, that immersive quality is exactly what they're looking for. They want to feel completely absorbed in the story, living alongside the characters, feeling their joys and sorrows as their own.
Some even describe the experience as cathartic, as if by bearing witness to Jude's pain, they are able to process their own emotional baggage.
It's almost like a little life creates a space for a kind of collective grieving, a shared recognition of the universality of suffering. But then you have those who see this as manipulative,
Yeah.
as if the author is exploiting the reader's empathy.
And some even go so far as to call Yanagihara's writing sadistic, arguing that she seems to delight in inflicting pain on both her characters and her audience.
It's a tough accusation, but it definitely speaks to the intensity of the emotions this book stirs up.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to that question of why this book is so divisive.
Yeah.
Because it's clear that A Little Life doesn't aim to please everyone. It's a book that demands a lot from its readers. Emotional stamina, intellectual engagement, and a willingness to confront difficult truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
It's like Yanagihara threw down a gauntlet, daring us to look away from the suffering, from the ugliness of the world, and that can be a deeply polarizing experience.
For some, that challenge is exactly what draws them in. They see the novel as a powerful meditation on the human condition,
Right.
a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
But for others, it's simply too much. They find the relentless focus on suffering to be gratuitous,
Right.
even exploitative.
And I think both responses are valid. It speaks to the subjective nature of art and the fact that there's no single correct way to interpret or respond to a novel,
Right.
especially one as complex and challenging as A Little Life.
You know, one thing that struck me as we were going through these reviews is how often people mention feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
by the novel's bleakness.
Yes, and I think that feeling is partly due to the novel's lack of historical context. You mentioned this earlier, and I think it's a key point. A Little Life creates this strange, almost timeless bubble
Right.
where major world events like 9/11 or the economic downturn seem to have no impact on the characters' lives.
It's like the novel exists in its own hermetically sealed universe,
Yeah.
completely detached from the realities of the world outside.
And I think this contributes to the feeling of unease or disbelief that some reviewers express. Like, we're asked to care deeply about these characters, to invest in their pain,
Yeah.
but we're kept at arm's length from the world they inhabit.
And that disconnect can be jarring. You're right. It creates a sense of dissonance, almost like you're watching a play where the actors are pouring their hearts out on stage,
Yeah.
but the set is completely bare.
And that might be another reason why some readers find the novel to be unbelievable or cartoonish. They struggle to reconcile the characters' extreme experiences and emotional reactions with the seemingly artificial world they inhabit.
It's like the novel creates this heightened, almost operatic sense of drama that can feel both captivating and artificial at the same time.
And this again seems to be part of what makes A Little Life such a polarizing experience. Some embrace this heightened emotional landscape, finding it to be moving and profound, while others find it to be overwrought and manipulative. And I think both responses are valid. It really comes down to the individual reader's sensibilities and expectations.
It almost feels like Yanagihara intentionally set out to create a novel that would deliberately provoke strong reactions, both positive and negative. And she certainly succeeded.
Indeed. And this raises a really interesting question about the purpose of art. Is it to provide comfort, escapism, or entertainment? Or is it to challenge us, to make us uncomfortable, to force us to confront the complexities of the human experience?
And I think A Little Life falls firmly into the latter category.
Right. It's a novel that demands a lot from its readers.
Yeah.
But in doing so, it sparks a conversation, a debate, a reckoning with our own limits. When it comes to empathy, compassion, and the very nature of suffering, it's a book that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
And in a world saturated with information and fleeting trends, it's refreshing to encounter a book that has this kind of staying power.
Absolutely.
So on that note, let's dive even deeper into some of these specific criticisms and reactions to A Little Life. What stood out to you as we were going through these Goodreads reviews?
One thing that struck me was how often reviewers commented on the novel's exploration of identity. While the book touches on themes of race, class, and sexuality,
Yeah.
some readers felt that these themes were underdeveloped, almost like they were overshadowed by Jude's trauma.
Yeah, and this goes back to the point you made earlier about the novel lacking historical and social context. Because by focusing so intensely on Jude's individual suffering, A Little Life misses an opportunity to explore the broader systemic forces
Yeah.
that contribute to marginalization and suffering.
Exactly. And I think this is why some readers, particularly those from marginalized communities, felt that the novel's representation of identity was lacking. It's like the novel focuses on the microcosm of individual experience without acknowledging the macrocosm of social and political structures
Yeah.
that shape those experiences.
And this might explain why some reviewers found the novel's portrayal of certain identities to be problematic, even harmful.
Yeah.
Because while the intention might be to explore the complexities of human experience without acknowledging the systems of power at play,
Right.
there's a risk of reinforcing harmful stereotypes.
Right. It's like telling a story about a fish struggling to breathe without mentioning that it's out of water.
Wow.
The individual struggle is real, but without the context of the environment, the story feels incomplete and potentially misleading.
That's a great analogy. And it really highlights the importance of considering both the individual and the systemic
Yeah.
when we're talking about complex issues like trauma, identity, and social justice.
And I think that's one of the things that makes A Little Life such a thought-provoking and controversial book.
Yeah.
It forces us to engage with these complexities, to confront our own biases and assumptions, and to wrestle with the limitations of empathy.
Right.
It's not a comfortable read, but it's a necessary one.
And it's a conversation that's worth having, which is why we're here today diving deep into these reader responses and trying to unpack the many layers of this complex and challenging novel.
And I think that's the beauty of literature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It provides a space for us to engage with these difficult questions, to challenge our assumptions, and to expand our understanding of the human experience.
Absolutely.
Right.
And while A Little Life might not offer any easy answers, it definitely gives us a lot to think about.
It's interesting how a single book can spark such diverse and sometimes conflicting interpretations, right?
It speaks to the power of literature
Yeah.
to tap into something deeper, something that resonates with our own experiences, our own fears and anxieties.
And for some, that resonance might come from a place of shared suffering, a sense of connection with Jude's pain and isolation.
Many reviewers mentioned finding solace in the novel, a validation of their own struggles.
Yeah.
They saw themselves reflected in Jude's story, in his search for love, acceptance, and a sense of belonging.
But for others, that same intensity, that unflinching portrayal of trauma, was simply too much to bear.
Yeah.
They felt overwhelmed, even repelled by the novel's bleakness.
And I think that speaks to the subjective nature of art.
Right.
The fact that we all bring our own baggage, our own sensitivities to the table when we engage with the work of literature.
It's almost like A Little Life is a Rorschach test, revealing as much about the reader as it does about the characters and the author herself.
That's a great way to put it. And it makes you wonder, what is it about this book that has struck such a nerve? What is it about Jude's story that elicits such intense and often conflicting reactions?
Well, some reviewers pointed to the novel's ambiguous ending as a source of frustration. They wanted closure, a sense of resolution for Jude after all he'd been through.
And I think that's a natural human desire, isn't it? We crave narratives that offer hope to redemption, a sense that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's a possibility for healing and happiness.
But A Little Life doesn't offer that kind of neat and tidy ending. It leaves the reader with questions, doubts, a lingering sense of unease.
And for some, that ambiguity is deeply unsettling.
Right.
It challenges our desire for order, for meaning-making, for a sense that the universe is ultimately just and fair.
But for others, that same ambiguity is precisely what makes the novel so compelling. It forces them to confront the messiness of life, the fact that there aren't always easy answers or happy endings.
And perhaps that's what makes A Little Life such a powerful and enduring work of literature. It doesn't shy away from the darkness, from the ambiguity, from the questions that haunt us all.
It's a book that stays with you long after you've finished reading it, prompting reflection, debate, and a deeper understanding of the human condition.
You know, one of the criticisms we saw repeatedly was this idea that A Little Life is manipulative.
Oh, yeah.
That Yanagihara is intentionally exploiting the reader's empathy for her own artistic gain.
It's an interesting critique, and it definitely speaks to the power of the novel to evoke strong emotions.
Right.
But I think it's also a bit reductive.
Yeah.
To label the book as simply manipulative dismisses the complexity of the reader's experience and the multifaceted ways in which we engage with art.
I agree. It's important to remember that art is subjective. What feels manipulative to one person might feel deeply moving or cathartic to another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the case with A Little Life.
Yeah.
Some readers felt their emotions were being toyed with, while others felt seen and understood in a way they hadn't experienced before.
And it's interesting how this ties into the debate about the role of the author. Should an author be responsible for protecting the reader's emotional well-being? Or is it the reader's responsibility to engage with the material critically and to set boundaries as needed?
That's a complex question, and I think there's no easy answer. But I do think it's important for readers to recognize that art can be powerful, that it can evoke strong emotions, and that it's okay to step back if something feels too intense or triggering.
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth noting that A Little Life isn't just about suffering. It's also a story about love, friendship, and the enduring power of human connection.
Right. And while those themes might get overshadowed at times by the novel's focus on trauma, they're still present, weaving through the narrative and offering glimpses of hope and beauty amidst the darkness.
And I think it's those glimpses of hope, those moments of tenderness and connection that make the novel's bleakness bearable for many readers. Because without those glimmers of light, the story would be simply too overwhelming, too nihilistic.
And it's interesting how those moments of light, of human connection, often emerge from the most unexpected places.
Yeah.
For example, the relationship between Jude and his adoptive father, Harold, is incredibly complex and nuanced.
It's definitely not a traditional father-son dynamic,
Very.
but there's a deep love and care between them. It's in a sense of shared understanding that transcends their differences.
And it's those moments of connection, of shared humanity, that make the novel's darker aspects more palatable for many readers.
Yeah.
Because they offer a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, love and compassion can still exist.
And it's interesting how those themes of love and compassion tie into the novel's exploration of forgiveness. Because while A Little Life doesn't shy away from depicting the brutality of abuse, it also suggests that forgiveness both of oneself and of others is possible,
Right.
even if it's a long and arduous journey.
And that's a powerful message, especially in a world where we're often quick to judge and condemn a little life. Reminds us that healing is possible, but it requires empathy, understanding, and a willingness to let go of anger and resentment.
And that's a message that resonates deeply with many readers,
Yeah.
especially those who have experienced trauma or loss in their own lives.
Right.
Because it offers a glimmer of hope, a sense that even the deepest wounds can heal, even if the scars remain.
And it's interesting how the novel explores the idea of healing through art.
Yeah.
We see this most prominently in JB's character, who uses his art to process his emotions, to make sense of the world, and to connect with others.
And while some reviewers criticize the lengthy descriptions of JB's art,
Right.
I think those passages serve a purpose. They highlight the transformative power of art, its ability to heal, to connect, and to give voice to the unspoken.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why A Little Life has resonated so deeply with readers.
Yeah.
Because it's a novel that recognizes the power of art to transcend language, to touch our hearts, and to help us make sense of the complexities of the human experience.
And it's a novel that acknowledges the power of storytelling itself. Because by sharing Jude's story, Yanagihara invites us to bear witness to his pain, to empathize with his struggles, and to grapple with the larger questions about suffering, healing, and the meaning of life.
And while those questions might not have easy answers, the act of engaging with them, of wrestling with them through the medium of literature, can be a transformative experience in itself.
And it's that transformative potential, that ability to challenge our assumptions and expand our understanding of the world that makes A Little Life such a powerful and enduring work of art.
You know, another thing that struck me about these reviews was how often readers drew parallels between A Little Life and other works of literature that explore similar themes of trauma loss and the search for meaning.
Right. It seems like A Little Life has sparked a whole conversation about the way we read and interpret stories about suffering.
Some reviewers compared the novel to classics like The Great Gatsby and To The Lighthouse, highlighting the way Yanagihara uses intricate details and evocative language to create a world that feels both familiar and unsettling.
Others drew comparisons to more contemporary works like The Goldfinch and Leave the World Behind, novels that also grapple with themes of loss trauma and the complexities of human relationships.
And it's interesting how those comparisons reveal a kind of literary lineage,
Right.
a tradition of writers who are willing to explore the darker aspects of human experience, to challenge our assumptions about happiness and fulfillment, and to ask difficult questions about the meaning of life.
It's like A Little Life is part of a larger conversation.
Yeah.
A collective exploration of the human condition that spans centuries and crosses cultures.
And by placing the novel within this larger context, we can gain a deeper appreciation for its literary merit,
Yeah.
its artistic ambition, and its enduring power to provoke reflection and debate.
So as we've seen, A Little Life is a novel that has sparked a wide range of reactions, from adoration to outrage, from profound connection to utter rejection.
And those divergent responses speak to the power of literature to tap into something deeper, something that resonates with our own individual experiences, our own anxieties and fears, our own hopes and dreams.
And while the novel's unrelenting focus on trauma and suffering might be too much for some readers to bear for others, it offers a cathartic release, a sense of shared understanding, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and compassion can still exist. Ultimately, A Little Life is a novel that demands to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
It's a book that challenges our assumptions, pushes our emotional boundaries, and forces us to confront the complexities of the human experience. And while it might not offer easy answers or happy endings, it does offer a profound opportunity for reflection, growth, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
And that's a powerful testament to the enduring power of literature. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the reader responses to A Little Life, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you most in these reviews? What questions or insights have stuck with you?
What I found most intriguing was the way readers grappled with the novel's ambiguous ending. Some craved closure, a sense of resolution for Jude after all he had endured. Others found beauty in the open-endedness, seeing it as a reflection of the messy, unpredictable nature of life itself.
It's fascinating how a single narrative choice can elicit such diverse interpretations, right? It speaks to the power of art to invite multiple perspectives and to spark meaningful conversations.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes A Little Life such a compelling and enduring work of literature. It doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions. Instead, it invites us to grapple with the complexities of human experience, to confront our own biases and assumptions, and to find meaning in the midst of uncertainty.
Those are powerful lessons indeed. But we're not quite done yet. We've explored the criticisms, the emotional responses, the literary comparisons. But there's one more layer to this deep dive that I think is crucial to understanding the impact of A Little Life.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's this final piece of the puzzle?
Well, it's the cultural impact of the book, A Little Life. It isn't just a novel that sits on a shelf. It's sparked discussions that go far beyond literary circles.
Yeah, that's true. It's been featured in articles, podcasts, even art exhibitions. It feels like it's tapped into some kind of cultural nerve.
Right.
Sparking conversations about trauma resilience and the limits of empathy in modern society.
And what's fascinating is how those conversations often mirror the polarized reactions we saw in the Goodreads reviews. Some see A Little Life as a vital work of art that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the human condition.
While others view it as exploitative and harmful, arguing that it romanticizes suffering and perpetuates harmful stereotypes. It's almost like the book has become a cultural Rorschach test, revealing our collective anxieties and beliefs about pain resilience and the meaning of life in the 21st century.
It makes you wonder if the cultural moment we're in right now, with its heightened awareness of social justice, issues, mental health, and trauma,
has amplified the book's impact. Maybe A Little Life wouldn't have generated the same level of debate or attention a decade ago.
That's a really interesting point. It's like the book arrived at a time when society was primed for a conversation about these difficult topics.
Right.
And Yanagihara, whether intentionally or not, provided the catalyst.
And because of that, A Little Life has transcended the realm of fiction. It's become a cultural touchstone, a reference point for discussions about empathy, responsibility, and the ethics of portraying trauma in art.
And it's a conversation that's still unfolding. It's fascinating to see how the book continues to be interpreted and reinterpreted as the cultural landscape shifts and evolves.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about, hasn't it? We've seen how A Little Life has sparked passionate debates, challenged conventional narratives, and forced us to confront our own limits when it comes to empathy and understanding.
It's definitely been a journey.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the question we posed at the beginning. What does this book reveal about us, the readers?
Yeah.
What are our own limits when it comes to confronting fictional suffering? And what does that tell us about our relationship to pain and empathy in real life?
It's such an important question, and one that I think each listener needs to ponder on their own,
Yeah.
because the answers will vary depending on our individual experiences, our beliefs, and our capacity for empathy.
But I do think A Little Life offers a valuable opportunity for self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It challenges us to examine our own responses to suffering, both within the novel and in the world around us.
Yeah.
It asks us to consider how we engage with stories of pain
Right.
and what those engagements reveal about our own values and beliefs.
And perhaps by grappling with those questions, we can cultivate a more nuanced understanding of empathy, compassion, and the complexities of the human experience.
So to our listener, we leave you with this final thought.
Mm-hmm.
As you continue to process this deep dive and perhaps even explore A Little Life yourself,
Yeah.
consider what resonates with you most. What challenges your assumptions? What expands your understanding of empathy and suffering?
Right.
What insights can you carry forward into your own life and interactions with the world?
A Little Life is a book that stays with you. It's a conversation starter, a thought provoker, and a reminder that even in the face of immense pain, human connection and the search for meaning endure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.